The Matthew Dark Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, praise God. Welcome in. Good to be with you. I want to start with the only two issues in America that matter right now, the Epstein files and the Iran war. Starting with the Iran war, we're almost 6 months now into it, and you could suggest that we're further away from a peace agreement and leaving Iran today than we were in March or April or June or whenever we've been promised that there's a deal on the table. Remember, the military's been obliterated. They told us that their navy is at the bottom of the sea and that they are begging for mercy. That's what we've been told repeatedly. Now, of course, the consequences back home for the Iran war have been inflation. And we have $4.07 gas. That's the national AAA average. Dispute it if you want. Maybe a little lower in some places, certainly higher in other places. But we have to pay for that. President Trump spoke to this last Friday at a rally. And this is what he said.
So I just say this. So for you to pay a tiny little bit more for your gasoline, just remember, you're doing it so that a very evil country cannot have a country. Really, it's the number one state sponsor of terror in the world. We don't want to have them have a nuclear weapon. So remember that when you have to pay a little bit more, you're at $4. It's okay. I mean, it's I'll never apologize. I did the right thing.
He says it's a little bit more, but it's not. If you remember, as he was coming in after he was elected 2024, it was supposed to be $2 a gallon, and so $4 is certainly not a little bit more, and especially when there's no end in sight. But the bigger, most overwhelming part of that comment is Iran didn't have a nuclear weapon. Joe Kent, Tulsi Gabbard, said there was no nuclear weapon. They don't have the capabilities today. We took the bombers last summer deep into the ground, and at that point, President Trump declared peace. They'll never have a nuclear weapon. And of course, February 28th, shortly after the disgraceful Pam Bondi testimony regarding the Epstein files, we started the war in Iran. And immediately he declared victory. Day one, we killed the Ayatollah. Remember, we did kill the 186 schoolgirls in Iran, and victory was declared that same week. And of course, we've been over this many times on this show, over 40 promises of there's a peace agreement ready to be signed. And he'll tell you that they're playing dirty cards, that it's all Iran walking away, but yet the Strait of Hormuz is still closed and that we still have high gasoline. And you notice what's going on here. Gasoline's actually come down. Oil has actually come down and gasoline continues to stay and move higher. Okay. Now, why is that? How are we getting the short end of the stick? And I would ask our listeners this, anybody viewing, when was the last night you lost sleep worried about Iran having a nuclear weapon? And you see they've got President Trump trained very well now on that neocon line. Iran is the biggest state sponsor of terror in the world, and we have to shut that down. Remember, Marco Rubio, what he told us the morning after is that Israel was going to attack Iran, okay, so instigating conflict. And that in an effort to protect our interests in the Middle East, this is the bases in Kuwait and Qatar and Saudi Arabia and these places, we intervened, we hit them so they couldn't do it, right? That's what we were told. Now, the whistle, the cry, the march is Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. So you wonder, why did he pick this timing? And is there enough time left before November to bring gasoline back down to $3? And $3 is still unacceptable for the American people. We are told all the time that this country has the most oil reserves. And he also now adds Venezuelan oil to the United States capacity, saying we're the biggest and the greatest, but yet we still pay so much in gasoline. Why is that? And when is it going to stop? Okay. So we know the timing of the Iran war was absolutely in collusion with the Epstein files disaster that we're going to get into now. And regardless of how you feel about Iran, you are paying for this. So you have to step back and ask yourself, was I so scared Iran was going to get a nuclear weapon that I'm willing to pay $2 more per gallon indefinitely? Because the way it stands right now, Strait of Hormuz is still closed. President Trump, he says he's taking it. Iran says over our dead bodies. And so you still have the same stalemate that we've been at since the early weeks of this war. Strait of Hormuz used to have 100 to 140 ships come in and out of that passage every day, hauling energy. It's down to 6 in, 6 out under Navy escort. All of this is costing money. It's $2 billion a day, which the United States does not have. That's printed money, further causing inflation. We have gasoline now, unable to refine it at the rate in which the American people need. We needed $2 gasoline. And they'll say, well, who are you? Why are you complaining, you cheap state? I was never scared of Iran, no. So, no, I don't feel like I deserve a bill for gasoline because neocons thought this was the time, the moment to get another forever war going. And this is much, much closer to a forever war than an in and out conflict like maybe he thought he could do in Venezuela. Totally different country, much larger, much dangerous, way more advancements in military. And now you and I are just holding on, hoping, can this come to an end? So it's really simple. Is President Trump willing to go all the way, obliterate Iran, because that was the promise on Easter. If you remember the promise on Easter, that if you don't open the Strait of Hormuz, the nation of Iran will cease to exist. We're going to wipe them out. 5,000-year-old civilization. We're going to take them down. I think the other misconception that the Trump administration, and it's hard to know if Donald Trump is being forced to do this or he's actually now bought into this. It doesn't feel like it's his heart, because he was a no more war guy. He was very critical of Iraq, very critical of Afghanistan, all the destruction, Libya. I mean, you name where the U.S. has gone in the Middle East, and you tell me where it's been a success story. You can't find one. There's not a single success story in the U.S. intervention in the Middle East, not one. We killed 1 million Iraqis. We spent $2 trillion over in those conflicts, 20 years. And what happened when we got out? Well, terrorists now run the countries that we were trying to, bring democracy to, stability to, peace to, and they've never been in worse shape. So President Trump has clearly switched his positions on U.S. intervention in the Middle East. And MAGA is not willing to hold him to account to it, even though MAGA pays for it. So you have to ask yourself again, was I more scared of the account balance in my checking account, or that Iran would get a nuclear weapon and kill me any day now? You have to believe that that was what was coming, or you wouldn't justify the war. You wouldn't justify the war if there was no fear to you or to have any impact on your life. I can think of like 12 things that are a real situation prior to Iran having a nuclear weapon. Inflation in America was already out of control. People can't buy houses. Groceries are too much. Gasoline's too much. That's one. Violence in our inner cities, our subways, our major metropolitans have become absolute ruins. They're filthy. They're in a state of rot. Those concern me much greater. Okay. This AI coming, whether you like it or not, flock cameras, surveillance, the ability to censor, to change what you can, where you can travel, where you can buy, this push to get us into cryptocurrencies. Remember, Trump sold his meme coin. He made $600 million while his investors took it in the shorts, pulled the rug out on him, right? Live in front of our eyes, they didn't even blink. Okay, keep going. We have a rotting education system. Our children are some of the worst educated in public schools, and we pay for that too. Keep going, keep going. I still haven't gotten to Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. And most people in America, they've never lost a night of sleep of it, but yet they're going to pay that bill for it right now. That's the problem. So you have less than 3 months to go to the midterms, in which Republicans hang on to razor-thin majorities, razor-thin stuff. You saw when they confirmed Todd Blanche, we're going to move right into Todd Blanche here in a moment, 50-49, no margin for error. Okay, had to have every single one of them sign up. Of course, no Mitch McConnell, still missing in action, still apparently alive, but just can't work. And he hasn't been able to work since June. He's 2 months missing. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear has said, we need some kind of sign of life. We need something that this man is still in full capacities. And his staff won't say a word. Why is that? Why are they doing this, right? More deceit. And you ask, why don't you just trust your government? They have your best interest. Why won't they tell me why Mitch McConnell hasn't been to work for 2 months? Why are they being secretive about it? We know he's old. We know he's sickly. We know he's kept himself in terrible shape. Why won't you just tell us what's going on? Do you think we can't handle it? Do you think it's too much? Do you think if he has high blood pressure, we're going to be like, Oh my gosh. So we have been lied to about that situation. Of course, Lindsey Graham died and they put his sister in. And now Trump is actually giving full backing to Lindsey Graham's sister. Now, who is she? Well, she's nobody other than she will absolutely co-sign on every single agenda of the president's. And what's the agenda of the president's right now? Well, cover up the Epstein files, continue the war in Iran. We only have 2.5 months, though, to the midterms. So you know what happens in January 2027 when Democrats regain control of the House? They will impeach Donald Trump day one. And see, this time there's meat on the bone, right? The Iran invasion enough. You have a commander in chief who is not getting war declared at the congressional level. And they sign a MOU to kind of delay that, but just to pick it up once it expires this next coming week. Okay, so we have illegal war going on, inflationary war going on, no end in sight war going on. American people should be saying, now, what's in it for me? How am I safer, better, more economically healthy? How's my physical security improved or gotten worse since this conflict? Because one of the rallying cries about going after Iran was simple. They chanted death to America. That was before February 28th. Do you think they like us more now? Do you think they like us more now or prior to this event? So you've got an enemy that the only way to deal with is complete annihilation, and there's no way Trump has the stomach for something like that. Now, many in the Israeli government, many neocons in our government would have no problem using nuclear weapons right now to wipe out the nation of Iran. I think they would take joy in that. Okay, but that's going to be very unpopular here at home, right? When you ask the American people, we're going to kill about 90 million people, and we need your blessing, and we're going to need your money for it. And of course, we're running low on munitions. We've spent all our munitions in Ukraine. We've spent all our munitions defending Israel, and now we're asking to step up with more. We reported last week the U.S. NATO commander says, I now have to have more ships, another destroyer, or I'm going to have to choose, do I remain and defend Israel in the Middle East, or do I peel back and defend America? You know, because the American military is supposed to defend our interests, our homeland, and now we don't have enough stuff to continue these fights. And God forbid, China wants to get aggressive. Russia wants to increase hostilities in Ukraine. We're out. We're broke. We didn't build enough stuff yet. Come back in 6 months and we should have some more stock. That's not going to cut it in war. It's all right now. Must use it now. We've reported Iran is using $25,000 drones. We're using $25 million missiles and jets and tankers. And that's just not the way wars are fought anymore. So Iran holds a strategic advantage by their geographical location in the Strait. We've already spent a fortune, $2 billion a day to be a part of this war. And there is nothing coming that suggests this war is almost over. Any day now it could end. That's not true. And in fact, what Trump is suggesting is that the U.S. will now take the Strait of Hormuz as a U.S. territory. And of course, the Strait of Hormuz is Iran's greatest piece of leverage because that they can actually do right now. They don't have a nuclear weapon, so that's not leverage. Of course, we saw what happened to Gaddafi in Libya. He said, fine, back off. I won't do the nuclear. And he was dead within a year. Iran knows what's coming to them. They have to have nuclear. Why does nobody mess with North Korea? Why are they allowed to have one and they have, I don't think, peace in their nation, but they have peace amongst other nations? Nobody's going to touch them. Why? It's going to be collateral damage. You're not going to go in there. And so, of course, Iran needs to preserve the ability to do that. The U.S. has them in their radars. They have them in their sights. They've been deemed for destruction by Israel. So, of course, they have to keep that. And, of course, they have to keep the Strait of Hormuz closed. It's their only leverage. And there's no way at this time that the president would be willing to walk away in shame and say, I think we were misled. I think we got out over our skis. And we're just going to come back and focus on America for the rest of the year. And there was no shame in that. That would be glorified. That would be honored. But then, of course, he's going to look like a fool to the Democrats and open himself up to, you did this illegal war. We're coming for you. And now you're going to have to answer in January. The voters are already pissed. Trump needed a ton of independents to vote for him in 2024 to get the record breaking, to get the popular vote, to beat Kamala Harris. Now, it's sad to think that you needed anything to beat Kamala Harris. That's not a real candidate. That's not a person that you could ever, you couldn't have her manage a Burger King. let alone the United States. And so it is sad to think he needed everyone on board in 2024. Democrats had opened the border. They let men into women's and children's bathrooms. They caused inflation themselves. And they were also a corrupt administration, much like the Trump administration. Right. So, of course, they were not going to get the benefit of the doubt. That group, Joe Biden's just a horrific record coming into 2024, Trump won. Trump should have won that election, even if you didn't know what you know now. Okay. And I didn't know what I did not think Trump was capable of switching teams mid-year, this first year, mid-year, this second term, excuse me. Okay. Where he did, in fact, go from somebody who was America first, MAGA, Maha, all these things. Those were leading campaign promises. And what we've seen is those just kind of slowly get shoved to the back. And our whole focus, our whole attention is war. They're asking for a $1.5 trillion military budget next year. That to me isn't a country that's seeking peace. They're seeking war. 1.5 trillion, we reported last week. Ask yourself, of all the issues in America, bridges, roads, mental illness, homelessness, drug addiction, the border, is there a single problem in the United States that you couldn't solve, couldn't cure with 1.5 trillion and have a lot left over? And the answer is, of course not. There's not a single problem in America that if you did it, I guess with the proper heart and strategy, that 1.5 trillion wouldn't solve. I can think of spending, a fraction of that on mental institutions all over America. We can't have you sleeping on the streets and doing drugs on the streets anymore. So we've got a couple of options. Of course, we have jails, and we can build more jails. We're probably going to need more jails. We also have this mental institution where you're going to stay for some time. We have to rehab your brain. It's been damaged. It's been damaged by living on the streets. It's been damaged by consuming drugs. And then the voices in your head that have been telling you that this is the way to live for all those years, we got to unwind all that. And we can do that easily for 1.5 trillion. Prisons. We have offenders on the street that have been catched and released. We have migrants in the community that came here illegally. We have more prisons now, unlimited capacity for prisons, unlimited capacity for mental institutions, and then we can also build out work release programs for all these people. We don't actually want you in the asylum the rest of your life. We don't want you in jail for the rest of your life. We want you to snap to it, wake up, get the help you need, get the treatment you need, get the addiction under control, get the focus in your life back on something good like God, and let's focus you back into the workplace. And we can make our own Chinese trinkets there. We can assemble, manufacture. We've got $1.5 trillion, remember, every year to build out these facilities, right? So the money is there. Printed money is there. It just has to go to the right places. Okay, so the Iran war is going to come back to haunt Donald Trump here in November. The other one, and this one's probably the most unavoidable, this is the one that you really can't, as much as they've tried, you can't get around, the Epstein files. Judge Emmet Sullivan last Thursday ordered Todd Blanche in person for an on-camera review of the redactions, and there's emails and FBI notes that have not been disclosed to the public, and Judge Emmet Sullivan says, we're going to have those now. Todd Blanche did not show up to that. This is all a part of the Katie Fang, the journalist lawsuit. Epstein Files Transparency Act requires the DOJ, the FBI to hand over all documents related to the Epstein's files, and the only permissible redactions are those that name victims, okay? Now, we can clearly see in the first 3 million files that we got in January that we had perpetrators' names redacted. We had emails coming from Harvard professors to Jeffrey Epstein, his name blacked out, a Middle Eastern sultan talking about, I loved the torture video, and his name was blacked out. Now, he's not a victim. He's a participant. And the judge is now saying that's not going to work. And he has said this, and this is not a threat. Excuse me. Yeah, it's not a threat. It's a promise. He has said these will all come out or there will be contempt charges. So right now, the Department of Justice is actively breaking federal law. Federal law, whether you like that or not, that trumps all prior standing. Congress passed a law. They are required to give it all up. The MAGA right, and even Fox News and that crowd, what do they say? They say it's a hoax. They say it's not true. They always say this, well, if President Biden had all this information, he would have released it. And that's just not true. Because President Trump is not the only star of the Epstein files. We're not even suggesting he did anything to kids. We're just suggesting that he is the leading authority figure providing the cover up around the Epstein files. And we ask why. Why would an innocent man with clean hands that didn't do anything wrong? And remember, they tried to tell us that Trump was an FBI informant that was brought in to help them with Epstein, to turn over evidence against. We believe you, President Trump. We don't think you did a single thing wrong. But we know for a fact, like the sun's going to rise tomorrow, that there's more than Ghislaine and Jeffrey in the files. We're asking, why are you playing the games with the files? Why would you want to intentionally avoid prosecution for men that rape children, kidnap children, killed children? Why would you want to eat children? Why would you want to participate in that? Now, a 5-year-old and a 16-year-old, I'm sorry, that's still a child. So we can't say, well, they weren't 5, they were 16. Doesn't matter, doesn't work. They were victims, and their victims are requiring justice. And the Epstein Files Transparency Act provided an avenue for justice for these victims. Thomas Massie was forced out of Congress for being a pioneer and the author of the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which did pass. President Trump was forced to sign it. There were so many votes pro it in Congress that he had no veto power anyways. That's the beauty of our system. He signed it, and they try to give him credit like, well, he signed it to release it, but he didn't have a choice, right? There was only one person, Clay Higgins from Louisiana, that said you shouldn't release these. So, he's captured, right? Basically, if you're against releasing the Epstein files, you're taking AIPAC money or you're a part of the Epstein files. Other than that, there's absolutely no reason. We're trying to get rid of those that are committing crimes against pedophiles. And the right, the religious right, the conservative right, is actually the biggest prohibitor of us getting to that information. Why? Well, we know why. They thought that Donald Trump was going to solve all their problems. Most MAGA boomers were so terrified at the idea of Democrats winning that they put all faith and all hope and everything into Donald Trump. And to even suggest that he's ever done anything wrong drives them crazy, drives them nuts, drives them to a point of insanity that maybe Donald Trump knows a little bit more about the Epstein files than he's disclosed. And we know for a fact that you don't have thousands of victims, and it was only Ghislaine and Jeffrey that enjoyed the girls. Really? These are still not maybe the smartest people, but they don't have mental, they're not Down syndrome people. They can understand that, well, now why would you behave like this if you didn't do anything wrong? Like that's been going on since the beginning of time. Guilt is oozing out of the Trump administration. And so it makes us wonder, well, geez, maybe he does know more. Maybe they are trying to hide something. What is it? And Judge Emmet Sullivan is saying, no, the people have a right to know. And he says his words, what the hell is going on? Trump really screwed up, though, by making himself the star of the files. He's not the star of the files. There's players far worse than him inside the files. And he said it to Marjorie Taylor Greene that if these are released, it's going to hurt my friends. You're the president of the United States. You're not allowed to have those kind of friendships anymore. And if your friends are doing that, screw your friends. We want your friends tried, convicted, might require execution, certainly prison time, depends on what the law says and the crimes that they're able to be convicted on. But this doesn't leave us without a full and fair investigation. Judge Emmet Sullivan now is the judge, the most inconsequential judge in America right now is him. Now, of course, there will be the unsealing of some Ghislaine Maxwell files that her attorneys have said those must stay sealed. But again, federal law trumps all prior laws. This is how we're now operating. So now those have to be disclosed. Now we have to see what else was Ghislaine's attorney. What else were they hiding? What else has not been disclosed? There's 6 million files, 3 million still remain, and now we have to have them. So there's been a deadline of 10 days in which Todd Blanche, who did not show up to this hearing, they sent a junior attorney, caused a lot of frustration. They were not allowed to do that. They sent a no-show or an appearance email to the judge, and they were going to be sending this guy, this junior attorney, who at one point was quoting, "I have nothing else to say." right? They're out of lies, they're out of answers, and so now the clock is ticking. So Donald Trump can go back and say, I don't care, I don't apologize for $4 gas. He can start another war in another place in the world. It's not going to take care of the Epstein files. Why? Congress passed a law that says we had to have them. Sorry, we got to have it. And if you're going to get in the way of it, now we have contempt charges. Of course, Todd Blanche is being threatened with $1,000 a day in fines for his disregard of judges' orders. And you have to ask, what in the world was Congress doing, the Republicans, confirming a man who was actively participating in the greatest cover-up in American history? And we're watching it happen right now. You could look at other great cover-ups and other great tragedies in the United States. Look at Kennedy's assassination. Look at 9/11. Look at COVID. Look at Charlie Kirk. I mean, Charlie Kirk, we have a chance, kind of like Epstein, to catch him in the act, catch him in real time. To suggest that Tyler Robinson went up on a roof with his granddad's gun, assembled it, crack shot, ran down somehow without the gun. They've got images now that don't match. I mean, there's a great cover-up going on there. Epstein files trumps that one. It has to be Epstein files to move on. And guess what? When Donald Trump came down the escalator in 2015, he's running for president. He said two things. We're going to close the border and build a wall, and we're going to drain the swamp. Your swamp is the Epstein files. That's where they live. And you could get them all in one fell swoop. We don't have any statute of limitations here. Murder and rape and stuff. We got all the time in the world. We can go back as far as we need to go. The 90s, no big deal. We've still got them. But now we at least have a chance to force the DOJ to present the reason why did you redact these files? And why were the FBI notes? Because the other element of the Epstein Files Transparency Act is if you chose not to pursue a criminal, a perpetrator, we need the notes as to how did you get to that conclusion. They're not giving us those notes. Those notes mean a lot because in those notes, what it says, yeah, he's in the email. Yeah, he was present when young girls were present. Yeah, he was a known associate of Jeffrey Epstein, but he's a really important person. He's really wealthy. He's a big donor. He could be Jewish. So therefore, we're not going to pursue. They're going to have to give that up in writing. And this thing is about to explode in the DOJ's face. Get your pardon pen ready. Get your auto pen ready. If you're Donald Trump, you're going to need a lot of them, including yourself, because he's made himself now the author of the greatest cover-up in American history. We're watching those two stories intensely. Will Donald Trump stay true to his word, like he said on Easter, destroy Iran once and for all? And that's probably the only way out of this and keep safe face. And then what is the DOJ's response going to be when the judge says you now have 1 week to get your butt in here and we're going to go through all these, and then he's going to say these are now available for release. There's nobody compromised in there that was doing good. There's nobody that was going to be released that was a victim. We took care of that. Originally, the FBI, the DOJ did release victim names. And why did they do that at the beginning and then they redacted them? Well, that was to intimidate them. Don't you dare, you could see what we're doing. Don't you dare think about moving forward. And just so that you're sure we're serious, we're going to put your names out there for the world to see. There was 34 victim names on that original release that they had to then go back and redact. So you see, they had no problem giving us victim names, but for some wealthy oil tycoon in the Middle East, they make sure they meticulously black those names out. I don't understand, though, what's going on with MAGA, that they don't want to believe there's something there. Why not get Bill Gates? Why not get Bill Clinton? Why not get Les Wexner? Why not get the people that are easy? And these are Democrats. These are secular Jews. Why wouldn't you want to get them? They're opposing your values. They're opposing your president already. Isn't this what you dreamed of? Drain the swamp, baby. They're in the files, and they won't do it. So we ask ourselves in America, can you move forward with this type of deceit and this type of cover-up and still want to pay taxes, still want to go vote, still feel like you're going to fight for your country? Why? Why would you do such a thing? They're basically saying, we're going to do what we want, regardless of what the law says or what you says. And we can't allow that anymore as American people. So we have too much pride going on, because I got no problem. 3-time Trump voter, so sorry, way off. Not like there was a choice, but to tell other people you got to vote for Trump, shame on me, right? Look at what you're getting. Record inflation. You're getting record deceit. We've ushered in AI, crypto, mRNA technology now. Remember, Moderna this fall, and it's going to be available. If it's not available today, it's within days. Moderna's mRNA flu vaccine. And if you remember Tony Fauci's recently released text messages, he knew that that second shot was causing, or very well could be the cause, of the spike in miscarriages that we were seeing in the first trimester. He knew that, and he still said this was safe for young mothers, safe for young babies. It's the mRNA technology that hurt people, spike protein, getting embedded into DNA and then not leaving the body ever. You know, shots that go in the arm should never make it into the brain. Okay. And that's happening. So we have blood clotting, neurological, cardiovascular. And now they're going to mandate, certainly in the military, the flu vaccine, and it's going to be mRNA. Okay. And this is Trump's FDA voted 9-0 to approve it. And so here we go. And you know why they're doing it. You know, COVID has such a bad name now, the COVID shot. I mean, nobody's taking them. Less than 7% uptake still on the COVID shot. That's nothing. 80% of the country got it the first time around. I'll be super clear. Wouldn't touch one. I might give it to a death row inmate as a form of lethal injection. Outside of that, it's not fit for human consumption. And they said pregnant mothers and babies could have it. But the flu has more of a, oh, it's just vanilla ice cream. Everybody gets the flu, get your flu vaccine, it's no problem. This one's going to be a little spicier, though. This one's going to have just a little bit different twist on it because it's mRNA, and it's, of course, first time out of the gate. So you're signing up for some brand new stuff. You think they've been testing this vaccine for 10 years? Of course not. You're going to be the science experiment. You're going to be the test group. How many are we going to lose? Theirs should be popping. Our vaccine adverse event reporting system should explode again like it did with COVID once this thing hits the masses. So every granny in the granny home, they're going to get one. Every military active service member, he's going to get one. You know, every single one of our diehard Tony Fauci fans, they're lined up to get one. The flu vaccine, even if it wasn't dangerous, is only 30% effective. On a good day, they're guessing at the strain. They're just, is this the one we're going to get? We make some modifications each year. We slap it on there, and those people still get the flu. You know, if I take a polio vaccine, I need that to come with a guarantee that I'm not going to get polio or I'm not taking the vaccine, right? If I take measles or mumps or tetanus, that needs to guarantee I'm not going to get that disease. Why? Because the vaccine itself carries too much risk. In fact, more risk than the disease that it's supposed to protect you from. Okay? This is coming to America at electric speed, lightning speed, and nobody's saying anything. They're embracing it. Of course, we'll take more medicines. Of course, we'll take more cover-up. Of course, we'll take more war and inflation, right? So the timing, could it be worse for Donald Trump? Think about it. This could all collide. And you also have incredible financial markets right now, meaning they're like a rubber band stretching. How much higher can we take the stock market up? On nothing. Right? So we have all these things coming together in one season. Iran war, Epstein file cover-up, inflation maxing people to the brim, frustration maxing to the brim. And then in November, they're going to have to go to the polls and say, do I want change or do I want more of the status quo? And Donald Trump has set all the situation, all the elements for people to completely revolt and destroy Republicans in the fall. And he's going to blame guys like me and Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and anybody who dare says, hey, we love you, President Trump. We support you. But we feel like we've gotten off target. We feel like we've maybe missed the boat on the America First, Make America Great agenda. Can we talk about some of these things? Or can we get back to these agendas that sounded so good during the campaign? Cheap fuel, reducing inflation, dealing with corruption, dealing with fraud, all those things we haven't touched. We did USAID and then we walked away from it, right? We had the Epstein files law passed and then we said, yeah, but we're not going to hold our end of the bargain. That wasn't allowed. That wasn't okay. We said we reject the COVID mRNA shot and we got more of it, okay? We need less deceit, more action for the people. And I think it's going to require a midterm slaughter to bring Donald Trump's focus back to the American people. But see, the problem's going to be now he has no support in Congress, inside of Washington, that can help him get anything good done. And let's face it, even Republicans, they could care less. Lindsey Graham, rest his soul. He was not an America First guy. He was a war first guy. A lot of people don't remember he was making $192,000 a year, yet he was worth $60 million. How can that happen? How can that be? Well, war 24/7, donations coming in 24/7 to continue those kind of ideologies, those all contribute. So we look back and say, but where do we get a piece of the action? We're just paying the bill, but with no benefit. Remember, we were never scared of Iran. I've yet to meet a person, maybe my parents would be the closest, that actually lost sleep, that couldn't get their head around Iran can never have a nuclear weapon, right? They didn't have a nuclear weapon, but you have a bill as if they did. That's a problem here in America. So we sit back and we ask, what could generate a course correction of where America's heading? And it's simply the people saying enough. Democrats, Republicans, do you understand that we're all on the same team? We the people versus them the government. Talking about you love Tony Fauci against people that say they love Donald Trump. Neither one of them serving your best interest. You can say Donald Trump was, the biggest slimeball, sleazebag. That's fine. Tony Fauci was too. Just because you hate Donald Trump doesn't mean you have to love Tony Fauci. They both did a terrible job in response to COVID, right? That's where we need to be at. It's not right versus left against the right versus left in Washington. They're both parties are coming for the same thing. Obtain more of your rights, cause you more chaos and inflation, cause more stress, and reduce kind of your joy. Both are contributing to the same problem here in America. And there's no action that you can see to change that. They get in there once and they want to stay forever. Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, Senator Grassley, 90-year-olds. This is a country run by geriatrics. Are we sure that's what we want? Are they really the ones that can take the needs of the 30-something, the millennial, and get that done at Washington? Of course not. They're serving baby boomers. They're serving those with substance and wealth and things that can pay their bills and keep them elected. And I just think the time's run out to where you're going to have a major flip in which the country is going to have to go lower, darker, deeper before it turns around. Status quo isn't going to work. Not going to work. You've already asked moms to work full time. You've already taken the education system and turned it into a toilet. Okay, you've poisoned our food. You've poisoned our medicines. You've corrupted our minds. You've injected AI into the culture. We never asked for AI into the culture, right? So when's enough for the American people? How much longer are you willing to pay half your income to the federal government? You should be done today. 25, 30% on the credit card. You should be done today, right? None of this stuff is working for us. And that's why November will be a major breaking point for the country. And it's going to go to Democrats. And we'll sit back here, we'll say, how did this happen? You had control of Congress, the Senate, the Supreme Court, the White House. You got nothing done. So that tells me putting you in power, putting you in control of all these branches, what good is that for? None. None. And Donald Trump is ultimately responsible for that. Question is there enough time before November for a major course correction? There's no way you can leave the taste buds with an increase in the war, right? If you left tomorrow and you began to unwind the inflation that's come from it, I think people have a short memory. They could forget. If we're at the exact same place as we're at right now, but now we're on November 3rd, November 2nd, November 1st, there's no way Republicans can win. Now, of course, we don't know what's going on with elections anyways. They're all being mailed in. They're all being like this. So you have no idea if Republicans are doing it or Democrats are doing it. We absolutely believe that Thomas Massie was mail-in special, that was interfered with. Thomas Massie had been winning his district 80-20, 75-25, slaughters for 14 years. And then this guy, some person named Ed Galleran, never been in office. He was a Navy SEAL and a boomer, and boom, send him to Washington. And he killed Thomas Massie, like 12 points. He got slaughtered. Miriam Adelson gave $35 million. Foreign government, foreign asset, Miriam Adelson gave $35 million to the 4th District of Kentucky. You wonder why? Well, Thomas Massie said I had to have the Epstein files, forced a law that made Donald Trump give up the Epstein files, and now we're in stalemate. So the next week is super critical for the next step in the Epstein files. Todd Blanche is going to have to answer for what he did last week. He has to show up in front of Judge Sullivan's chambers, and they're going to go through these things. And if the answer is insufficient, he will make a move and call contempt. We have to have the files. Federal law says it. And it's the best thing for it. Even though the boomer fan, the MAGA fan, doesn't want to see anything happen to their president, and I wish it wasn't so either. You want to keep a country, it can't be run by these kind of monsters. We have to eliminate them. So folks, do this. Catch us Facebook, hit subscribe, YouTube, hit subscribe, tell a friend, share it, and do this until next time. Serve the Lord Jesus Christ. Tell a friend about him. Stay good. God bless everybody.
The Matthew Dark Show, your one-stop show for truth, courage, fellowship, and faith. Available everywhere you get your podcasts.